Good morning, Alex and friends. I'm Grace. Today is Friday, December 27th, 2024, and you're listening to Alex's News. The weather in Riverside will be mild today, with a high of 63.3 degrees and a low of 49.2 degrees Fahrenheit. Coming up, we'll examine China's strategic focus on 7 major American defense companies and what it means for international relations. We'll also explore California's groundbreaking legislation that could transform how medical debt affects millions of residents. Plus, we'll break down a concerning report about climate change's impact on global temperatures, revealing how it contributed to 41 additional dangerous heat days around the world in 2024. All this and more ahead on Alex's News. Stay tuned. We begin with significant developments in U.S.-China relations. Joining us now is our international affairs correspondent Ethan Chen with details on new sanctions China has announced against American military companies. Ethan?
Thanks, Grace. According to the Chinese Foreign Ministry, Beijing has just announced a new round of sanctions targeting 7 U.S.-linked military companies and their executives, marking a significant escalation in ongoing tensions over Taiwan.
What specifically triggered these sanctions, Ethan?
According to reporting from the Global Times, these sanctions are a direct response to the recently passed U.S. National Defense Authorization Act for 2025, which China views as violating their One China principle and existing agreements between the two nations.
Can you tell us more about the companies being targeted?
The Ministry of Foreign Affairs has named 7 specific companies: Insitu, Hudson Technologies, Saronic Technologies, Raytheon's Canadian and Australian divisions, Aircom, and Oceaneering International. These companies will face asset freezes within China, and Chinese organizations and individuals will be prohibited from conducting any business with them.
This seems connected to U.S. military aid to Taiwan. What are the numbers we're looking at?
That's right, Grace. According to official data, the U.S. has approved up to $571 million in Defense Department material and services to Taiwan, plus an additional $295 million in military sales. Interestingly, the total U.S. arms sales to Taiwan in 2024 reached about $0.96 billion, which actually represents a significant decrease from previous years. For context, sales were $5.8 billion in 2020, $2.14 billion in 2022, and $1.86 billion in 2023.
And what's been China's official response to all this?
Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson Mao Ning has been quite clear in their position. The ministry states that supporting what they term Taiwan independence through arms sales will have serious consequences for U.S.-China relations. They're particularly critical of what they describe as a Cold War mentality in U.S. legislation, and are urging Washington to adhere to the One China principle and stop arming Taiwan.
Thank you for that comprehensive report, Ethan. We'll continue to follow this developing story. And now for our second story of the morning. California is set to implement a groundbreaking new law affecting medical debt and credit reports. Joining us to explain more about this is our financial correspondent, Chloe Martinez. Chloe, what can you tell us about this new legislation?
Thanks, Grace. In just 5 days, on January 1, 2025, California will roll out what many are calling a landmark law that fundamentally changes how medical debt is handled in the state. According to Cal Matters, this new legislation will make it illegal for healthcare providers and debt collectors to report any medical debt to credit agencies.
That sounds like a significant change. How many Californians could this potentially help?
The numbers are quite striking, Grace. According to reporting from LAist, approximately 38% of California residents currently carry some form of medical debt. That percentage jumps to over half when we look specifically at low-income residents.
What specific protections does this law provide?
Well, beyond preventing medical debt from appearing on credit reports, the law gives patients several important rights. If providers or collectors violate the law, patients can take legal action against them. They can also file complaints with the Department of Financial Protection and Innovation or the California Attorney General's office. However, it's important to note that there's one significant exception. Debt charged to medical credit cards or general credit cards isn't covered under this protection.
How does this compare to existing national policies?
That's an interesting point, Grace. The three major credit bureaus, TransUnion, Equifax, and Experian, actually stopped reporting medical debt under $500 in 2023. But considering that the national average medical debt is around $3,100, that protection was quite limited in scope.
Are other states taking similar actions?
Yes, they are. New York and Connecticut have implemented similar protections, with New York's law going even further by prohibiting liens on primary residences and wage garnishment for medical debt collection. Other states have their own approaches. Delaware prohibits interest charges on medical debt. Florida requires specific prerequisites before debt reporting, and states like Maine, Rhode Island, and Virginia have various other protective measures in place.
What happens if healthcare providers violate this new law?
According to the legislation, if providers or collectors report medical debt to credit bureaus in violation of the law, that debt becomes completely void and unenforceable. Healthcare facilities are also required to include specific language in their contracts acknowledging this prohibition.
Thank you for breaking this down for us, Chloe. This seems like an important development for California residents.
Indeed it is, Grace. Back to you.
Thanks, Chloe. Our reporting on this story comes from CalMatters and LAist. Here are some other headlines. German President Frank-Walter Steinmeier has dissolved parliament and set national elections for February 23, 2025. This comes after Chancellor Olaf Scholz lost a confidence vote following the collapse of his three-party coalition. Polls show Scholz's Social Democratic Party trailing behind the conservative opposition. In state legislatures across America, new laws are set to take effect in 2025. California will regulate AIUs in movies, requiring permission to create digital replicas of actors. Minnesota is banning rapid-fire gun triggers, while Delaware expands gun-free zones around colleges. Several states are implementing new social media regulations requiring parental consent for minors. Florida condo owners face higher costs as new regulations take effect, requiring mandatory structural inspections for buildings over 25 years old or 3 stories tall. The law, enacted after the 2021 Surfside condo collapse, also mandates fully funded reserve accounts for major repairs. A recent poll shows Americans largely blame both insurance industry practices and the alleged killer in the death of United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson. The suspect, Luigi Mangione, was found with a 3D printed weapon and documents expressing frustration with the U.S. healthcare system. China has revised its 2023 GDP estimate upward by 2.7% to 129.4 trillion yuan, or approximately $17.7 trillion. While maintaining its 5.2% growth rate for 2023, the World Bank forecasts growth to slow to 4.9% in 2024. And now for our third and final story this morning. A disturbing new report reveals the growing impact of climate change on global temperatures. With us now is our climate correspondent, Ethan Parker. Ethan, these findings are quite alarming.
That's right, Grace. According to a joint analysis from World Weather Attribution and Climate Central, human-caused climate change added an average of 41 extra days of dangerous heat worldwide in 2024, which was officially the hottest year on record.
Can you help our viewers understand what qualifies as dangerous heat?
The scientists define dangerous heat as temperatures exceeding the warmest 10% of temperatures recorded between 1991 and 2020. To put this in perspective, The Washington Post reports that on July 21, 2024, about 5.3 million people were exposed to these dangerous conditions.
I understand the impact wasn't uniform across the globe. Which regions were hit the hardest?
According to the Seattle Times, small island developing states near the equator faced the most severe impact, with over 130 additional days of dangerous heat. What's particularly tragic is that these nations contribute only 0.02% of global emissions. We also saw extreme temperatures affecting Northern California, Death Valley, Mexico, Central America, West Africa, Southern Europe, and various parts of South and Southeast Asia.
What about other extreme weather events during 2024?
Earth.org reports that researchers examined 29 extreme weather events in 2024 and found that 26 of them were directly linked to climate change. These events resulted in at least 3,700 deaths and displaced millions of people. While El Niño ±O played a role early in the year, scientists determined that climate change was the primary driver of these extreme events.
What are the implications for the future, Ethan?
The situation is critical, Grace. We're approaching the 1.5 degrees Celsius warming threshold set by the Paris Agreement. Scientists warn that without immediate action to reduce heat-trapping gases, we'll continue to see more frequent and intense extreme weather events. Heat-related deaths, which are often underreported, remain the deadliest form of extreme weather.
Thank you for that comprehensive report, Ethan. A sobering reminder of the climate challenges we face. That's all we have for now. Today's episode was made by Alexander King with Claude Sonnet 3.5, the Perplexity API, and the Google Cloud Text-to-Speech API. Hope you have a great day. I'll see you tomorrow, Alex.